Hello everyone and welcome back to Emeline's Writing Club. It's been a very stressful week, and for a second I thought that I wouldn't have the energy to record this episode, but here I am and I'm really proud of myself for showing up. As you can see, the back changed a little bit, not for long. I'm still trying to figure out how to record, but I changed the bed of space because I have so much more space back there to work. I cannot show you right now, but I'll probably show it in one of the au pair vlogs that I'm doing. If you want to watch those, don't hesitate, they're all on my channel. Also, if you hear some sounds in the back, it is also because some people are repainting the kitchen, and that is my only moment to film, so unfortunately we will have to do with it. Hopefully it will not be too noisy and you will still be able to focus on the podcast. My apologies for this. But for today, we're going to look back on that paper that I keep talking about that I wrote when I was at Central Washington University that talks about writing processes. I reread through it and there were so many insightful things that I really stopped considering, but that can really be helpful for my writing, especially because now that my characters are taking shape and that I'm really launching myself into writing the story in itself, the plot, the scenes, I need a writing process that works for me and that will make me go through the entire book until the end. So it kind of was the perfect moment to fall back on this paper. I really hope it's going to help you too. We're not going to just go over writing processes, but also a little bit on motivation and how to find motivation. The purpose of this paper was to gather all the writing processes of our favorite authors. So obviously you're going to hear about Leigh Bardugo in this one. Gathering all those writing processes to inspire ourselves from successful writer's journey and understand how we can input this in our writing processes. So let's say that there will be kind of three major parts in this paper and in this video. First one will be about writing process and how to build habits and what works for you, what doesn't work for you. It's a lot of exploring of what you want for your writing, but it will also be in the second part about motivation and how to find this motivation and what will drive you to write. Even though I worked on writing processes, through my research, it really made me explore other areas of the writing process about how to find motivation, because this writing process is made so you can have the habit of writing, so that you can have a way of writing that works for you and that will make sure that you go through the whole book. So it's a lot related to motivation, and it is also related to your motive to write, because we all have a reason to write. It can be a small one, it can be a big one. There's no rule around this, but it really is going to help you go through your whole book if you know why you're writing, the reason why. And it's kind of funny because I did this video on how I learned English, because for those who don't know, English is my second language. One of the first advice that I gave for people who wanted to learn English was to find a reason why they wanted to learn English. Like this, you can shape the way you're gonna learn. And it's kind of the same thing with writing process. And when you find your motive and why you want to write, then it's easier to find a way through your whole book and through your writing on how to go until the end. Depending on your reason of why you write, then you will have different expectations, and it's okay. Some people want to write something big and will have very big writing process in order to go through a big project they have, and other people will just write for fun, and therefore it's going to be a less complicated writing process or a different one. As long as your writing process is related to what you want and your objective, then it will work easier. Even though I'm going to go over those different themes, I most probably will make more videos more precise on each of those topics about motivation and motive. Writing process is probably not, because this is the video about writing process, but those are topics that I want to dig more into, and this paper didn't really go really deep into it. It was just a sort of support to understand writing process a little bit more. So let's dive into it. You will find in the description all the resources that I used to write this paper, because I think a lot were really interesting. You have podcast episodes, you have videos, you have texts, so everything will be in the description. Something I wanted to point first is that writing is not about talent. It is about work. which is why having a writing process is really important, because you can have talent, that is great, but if you don't have a plan on how to go through the book, then it's going to be difficult. And you kind of need to build all of these habits, all of this writing process in order to go until the end of the book, because throughout your whole book, nobody's going to motivate you. You're the only one holding yourself accountable for it. I know that Leigh Bardugo said one thing that really defines this really well. She said, we don't live in a world that rewards aspiring artists. Most of the time, you're going to struggle a lot during your time when you write, and you will have the reward only when the book is finished. But the biggest part of the job is the writing part. How many times when I was a kid, I wanted to write books, and I started it. I wrote a few chapters, but I kind of never went through the entire thing. I never really deepened those characters. I didn't have time to go through all of it. It was really difficult for me. So all those times, it's also because I was on my own writing this thing. How to find this motivation when you're on your own, you kind of have to figure this out by yourself. Through this paper, I gathered the advice from different authors. I'm going to make the list before we dive more into it. So of course there will be Leigh Bardugo, who wrote Six of Crows, one of my favorite books. Then we'll have Angie Thomas, who wrote The Hate You Give. Nnedi Okorafor, the author of Akatawitch. I think I talked about her already in the podcast. And Kaysen Callender. So the first question to ask ourselves is, do we need an outline? Which is kind of what I'm going over right now, because as I finish writing my characters, I have to think about what struggles they're going to face and how the plot is going to turn out. So one of the first questions is, do we need an outline? A lot of people will not, a lot of people will. It really depends on you. So Leigh Bardugo, Kaysen Callender, and Angie Thomas all followed an outline, but not too precise, because they needed to have a direction but still wanted to be surprised by the plot. But on the other hand, Nnedi Okorafor did not have an outline. For her, it was really blocking her writing, so it really depends on everyone. If an outline doesn't work for you, don't force yourself. Really, don't force yourself. Just try another way. It's okay. So as you can see, a lot of people who already wrote books don't always use an outline. So why wouldn't you do it without an outline? Also, something to consider is your writing process will probably change from one work to another. It is completely normal. It is completely okay. One of the examples was with Nnedi Okorafor. She, as you remember, do not write with an outline. But at some point she had to have a group project. When she worked on the Black Panther comic books, she had to work with other people, and therefore she had to go with an outline so they could all work together and make this project go until the end. And actually we have another example with Stan Lee. He used to write his comic books as a script and let the artist draw the characters, and then he would add the texts that were already made. But at some point he realized that it was taking too much time when there were a lot of comic books that he had to write. He figured that it would be a better idea to give them an outline, a general outline, let the artist do the comic books, and he would add the text. So again, your writing processes will change depending on the project, but also depending on the time and depending on your experience. With time, you might realize that some of the things that used to work do not work for you anymore, and it's okay. Now, what are the other questions that we could ask ourselves to develop and build a writing process that works for us? One of the questions you can ask yourself is, are you a morning writer or a night writer? I don't know if that really makes sense, but some people like to write first thing in the morning, a certain amount of words. I think it was in a podcast, Leigh Bardugo talked about another writer that she knew, Jess Brody, and Jess Brody talked about magical morning. Basically, this writer would write 500 words before doing anything during her day. She would wake up, write 500 words, and then go on with her day, because that's the moment where her brain was still fresh, ready to be creative. It was the best moment for this author to do this. So is it your case? Is it not your case? It's something that you can try out. And it kind of leads us to our next question, which is, do you work better with word counts or not? For me, I would say no. I have been so distracted by word counts. I have tried, for those who remember, we talked about this in this podcast, the NaNoWriMo challenge. It didn't really go well, even though I moved forward my book. I'm not going to be lying about this. I really moved my book forward. Word counts stress me more, and I focus less on my story when I focus on word counts. So is it your case? How do you work with this? I know that it is also the case of Leigh Bardugo of being bothered by word counts, so she turns it off. That's what I do too. It takes too much of my energy to look at the word word counts. I want to look at my progress in terms of scene and how much I wrote, but not in terms of words, because it really gets me out of the story completely. Another advice is, do you need to work with company? Sometimes it's easier for you to write with other people because you are held accountable for your writing. You have to show up because other people are showing up. When you're with a group of people writing, maybe it can motivate you. So are you working better with other people? That could be an idea. And maybe you can find someone who also has a writing project and you want to write together. And so you can plan something where you meet and you organize those writing sessions to motivate you and move your project forward. Then another question we can ask ourselves is, do we want to write chronologically? I do not. I do not write chronologically. What I do is I go for the scenes that speak to me the best, that are the most alive, the most real in my head. I know last time I wrote one of the scenes that I kept having in my head because I really wanted to make one of the characters' family alive, and I wanted to discover those characters. And actually writing that scene made me discover some of the characters that I completely missed. I don't think that I would not have written about them because they were part of the characters already, but I didn't really deepen them. I didn't really know who they were, but having them in that scene, writing them, it was really interesting to see how the character, when writing that scene, really took life. So again, is writing chronologically something that works for you, or do you prefer to write the scenes that are the most alive and real in your head? You don't have to do chronologically. I always did that when I was a kid because I thought that's how everyone did it, but when people write, they don't always, actually they almost never write chronologically. But if it works for you, you know what, go for it. And another question for those who haven't really started their books is, do you need to create your world before or during your writing? I know that I need to write it before, just because I need to make sure that I have something to hold on to and to have the rules of the world and everything. But I think I don't want to get it too precise. Sometimes it's good to just have a base that is not too much framed, so that you can still have the possibility to change a few things, to adapt, because most of the creativity will also come when you're writing. Leigh Bardugo talks about this, on how when she writes, what she does is, if there's the name of a town or the name of a character that she doesn't know, she does not go around and be like, how can I name this down? How can I name this character? Because it takes her out of her writing. So what she tends to do is write character A or character B and then looks up for it, because it will break your flow. You're so much into your writing. On most of this creativity can come up when you're writing, so let it come when you're writing. Especially try not to lock yourself in this world building in order not to write, because Leigh Bardugo talks about this. Don't use this as an excuse not to write, because that is really tempting to make your world, the rules of your world, the history of your world, the geography of your world perfect, because it will never be perfect. But the fact that you want to make it perfect, then you take so much time on it, you set aside the actual fact of writing. Now let's talk a little bit more about motive. Is it important to have a motive to write? Again, I think depending on your motive, then your writing process will be more complex or easier. It will completely depend on everyone. I wanted to point this out from one of the author that I think was so interesting, Nnedi Okorafor. When she was a kid, she was not really into sci-fi, but at some point she started to get interested into it when she visited Nigeria in 1990 and in the 2000s. It was at the moment where technology started to blend in Nigerian societies, and it was really interesting to her to see it blend into the traditional way of life, how technology came into Nigeria and how it implemented into the culture. And that's when she started to be interested in representing technology in African cultures. And that motivated her to write her books, but also one of the rules that I love about her books is she tries in her stories to never write about colonialism, even though it's sci-fi. She was much more into implementing African cultures in her books than focusing on a theme that tends to be way present in sci-fi, which is the colonization of extraterrestrial places. And she ended up writing all the sci-fi books she wanted on her shelf when she was a kid. Having this motive will really help us to at least finish the zero draft, which is kind of the most important one. It's the biggest step. I know a lot of this paper talks about the first draft. We're not going to go over it for the simple reason that I already made a full video about this, But then talking about motivation, there is a big part of this, of how as writers we do struggle, we do need motivation. How do we find this motivation? Through our writing, Larry Bardugo talks about the fact that we will have doubts. Doubts are part of writing. How do we face them is the question. For her, when you have doubts or you have other books' ideas, most of the time it's a sign that you might be lacking something in your book, but it doesn't mean the book you're currently writing is bad. Doubts are normal. Doubts will happen throughout the process. The thing is, are you going to listen to those doubts, or are you going to be stubborn enough to keep going? And of course, part of the writing process is also see how you can react to struggles, the different struggles you're going to face. And one of the biggest one is writer's block. Okafor, for the writer's block, what she does is ask her daughter what could happen next, because kids are really creative, and it's actually one of the reasons I think I talked about her in this podcast before. Since I'm an au pair now, I know that if I have an issue with the story or where it's going to be going and I'm kind of lost, I know that I can ask my host kids, especially because they're really interesting in the fact that I'm writing a book. Don't hesitate to ask kids because they have a lot of imagination. But otherwise, Leigh Bardugo recommends to go on a walk, have an imaginary conversation with your characters, take a shower, or just change the point of view in which you're writing. From third person to first person or the opposite. Sometimes it just helps to just switch a little, and then you come back on your writing and you adapt it to however point of view you need. Don't lock yourself in too many rules. Sometimes you just need to change the rules in order to arrive to the end, and it's okay. Also, consistency will be really, really important. Some people find that the way they find consistency is also by having habits around. Leigh Bardugo talked about this. She said, writing is not about falling in love, it's about staying in love. And I think that's the cutest sentence to describe writing in general. For Okafor, she talks about how it's important to have this consistency in everything you do, and not just writing, about everything around your life. She used to go to the gym pretty often. Going to the gym was part of her writing process because it was something that helped her focus, that helped her be accountable for herself and therefore for her writing, and she was way more focused when she ended up writing. Going to the gym ended up being part of the writing process because it helped her focus. Through your writing process, you can add things that have absolutely nothing to do with writing. It's completely fine as long as it helps you to write. Writing processes really differ from one person to another. It's completely okay. You will have your writing process that will only be your own. The motivation around and how to overcome those struggles are part of your writing process. How do you intend to face those struggles? A lot of it will be about experiencing. You will have to go through the struggle and figure out how to overcome it by yourself and what works for you. It's completely okay. You will fail and you will come back up. You will fail and you will come back up, but you will learn and you will build this writing process by yourself. I'm still working on mine. We're all lost as writers, and even most of those writers talk about how still today their writing process helps them, but writing is still difficult for them sometimes. So don't feel overwhelmed about this, and I hope this video helped you to kind of discover what your writing process is, and I hope it will help you to explore a little bit more about how you write, what works for you, what doesn't. But anyway, I think this is the end of this episode. I really have to go. I don't have a watch, but let's pretend. I really have to go because I have to meet some friends, and that was really like a short amount of time that I had to film this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and that it helped you. I will see you next week. Until then, take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, and I guess we'll see each other online. Bye!